Hello there, internet bikers. Welcome to another motovlog from Spain, or sunny Spain as you may also know about it. Yeah, it is a sunny day here in Spain, which is great, of course. So what I'm going to talk about today is, has anyone noticed, I'm hoping many of you have, but in any case I want to talk about it, is have you noticed that the typical American motorcycle looks like this, and the typical European motorcycle looks like this, which is very different? Yeah, so that's what I want to talk about. Why are they so different? Why did we get to this point? And what are the historical reasons behind the, big differences between what a typical American biker is and what a typical European biker is? And I think we're gonna have to start with the context, or basically more than the context, the reasons or the underlying reasons for all of this to have come about. My thinking is this happens in motorcycles same as it happens in cars, right? It's about motor vehicles in general. And you can see that American cars have historically been much bigger than European ones. It's gonna be the same reason for why American bikes are much bigger than European ones. But from now on, I'm just gonna talk about bikes. So the whole thing is that it comes down to two factors for me. There are two main factors for this, and they are geography and demography, or the land and the people. So those are the two main reasons. Why the land? Let's start with the first one, the land. Why is the land such a big deal? Well, Europe and America are very different in the sense that America is flat. It is very, very flat. You will of course have some mountain ranges to the edges. So to the east you have the relatively small or short, or not too tall, Appalachians, and to the west you have the big ones, the Rockies, right? But in between there's about 70% of the continent that is completely flat. And Europe is so different to that. Europe has a lot of different mountain ranges. There's a lot of peninsulas, inward or inland, not inland, but like seas, and it's just a lot of change in a relatively small space. So that already tells you that in the United States and Canada, it's all flat. And what does that mean? That means you just go in straight lines, right? There is no need to twist and turn, because why would you do that when you can just go in a straight line for wherever it is you need to do? You can almost always just trace a straight line and follow it. Not in Europe. That does not happen in Europe. Europe is a lot more broken, let's say. And so that's the land. Then the second point is the people. So Europe has been a bedrock of Western civilization for much longer than America, meaning that there's been more people around for longer, and that means that there's a lot of towns, a lot of countries and cultures, and even abandoned things, broken down. So there are cities that have been great at one point and abandoned centuries later. So there's a lot, and a very, very big population here, much bigger than the one in America, which is clearly catching up. But I mean, for historical purposes, it was always much more populated here in Europe. What that means is that if you want to go from one town to the next, or from one city to the next, it's never going to take more than 10 or 20 miles. You ride 10-20 miles and you're already in a different city, a different town, a different area. Same thing mostly all over Europe. And I mean, that's just the way it is. Whereas in America, you may have to drive in a straight line for 100 miles to get to the next town. It doesn't happen once, it doesn't happen twice, it happens dozens of times all throughout the central part of America. The Great Plains, the Midwest, all of this is very much flat and very spread out because the population, for completely different reasons to what this channel is about, the population there dwindled, and it's only coming back up in the recent maybe 30 or 40 years or so. Okay, so those are the two reasons that completely dictate what it is that you need in your transportation vehicles, right? So with that in mind, if you design the best possible motorcycle for those needs, which are, you know, go in a straight line to get to the next town, maybe 100 miles over, you're going to need something that is well, it's fast in a straight line, is stable, and it gives you some wind protection. So what you end up designing is a cruiser, and that, because that's what a cruiser is. It's good in a straight line. It has nice torque that can accelerate and get you going quickly, and they are long, low, and heavy, because that's what you need when you're doing high speeds. You need that to be stable. You need those components in your motorcycle for it to be stable. You also need wind protection, and so you end up with a lot of windshield options over there. And that's why you have this as the typical American style of motorcycle. And I think it's no coincidence that the two biggest motorcycle brands, most historical motorcycle brands in the US, Harley Davidson and Indian, they come from the Midwest or the Great Plains, right? Iowa, Milwaukee. That's right in the middle of the country. It's not in the coast, right? That's important, and I think these are the reasons why. All right, so whereas if you go into Europe, you're not going to need any of that. That's not going to make a lot of sense. What you need is something that's quick and nimble, something that is has a short distance between the axis or axles. I don't know how you say that in English, and that you can, you know, whip around from corner to corner relatively easy, because that's what you're going to have to do. And so what you end up with, and you also don't need to go far. Like I said, I mean, the next town over is going to be 10-15 miles away, so you don't really need wind protection. You don't need any of that. You just need something that you can whip around. And that is why what we call the standard motorcycle, or what has been called the standard motorcycle for a long time, is the typical European motorcycle. Now they're called nakeds as well, and but that's what they are. They're relatively light, they're very, very agile, and they're not necessarily meant for long distance riding. So that's the typical European motorcycle. It always has been. And one curious thing about this is that all major European countries came to the same conclusion. I mean, we all call this like the typical British motorcycle, something like this. It's the typical British because they were the most popular at the time, but they were the same type of motorcycle that Germany, Italy, Spain, France, that all the local brands or the local manufacturers in those countries, those are the same motorcycles that they ended up making. And it's not because everyone was copying the British, it's simply because everyone had the same needs. They came to the same conclusion that this was the best configuration for the job at hand. And that is why Europe has always been dominated by naked motorcycles. And this is what I'm saying. I mean, I'm riding here, 3 guys just passed me, they're all riding naked bikes. I wonder why. All right, I'm just getting out of the middle of nowhere here because I just bought some bird food for my extended family. And there's one more thing that I wanted to say that combines the whole people and land situation, which is that even the cities are different, because cities in America have been designed basically for cars, and cities in Europe were designed for people, basically because they exist since before cars. And so that means that space is different, right? The space is more limited in Europe, and space is not really a concern in the US or in Canada. What that means is that American cities, even a motorcycle, even in the city, is going to have a lot of space to turn around. And so having this long and low cruiser is never going to hamper you when you're in an American city. You're not even going to notice that that they're big bikes. You're just going to think, hey, this is better than the big car that I also have, and I can move around relatively nice with it. Well, cruisers in Europe, they don't work in the city because the city is more tight. I mean, roads are smaller. I mean, look at this road. This is a forest road, but regardless, roads are tiny, or at least they are not as wide as in the US. And that also means for motorcycles, but even in the city, you need the motorcycles to be agile. It's even one more thing that explains why motorcycles are so different, and cars of course, but explains why they are so different between these two continents. And and the other thing is Japan, right? Because the other big contributor to motorcycle history is Japan. But honestly, most Japanese bikes are and have always been copies or evolutions of what the Americans and Europeans had designed first. My cruiser is Japanese, but it is clearly an American style motorcycle. And the same goes for basically any other motorcycle that the Japanese may have built. I mean, they're really good at building things, but they haven't created anything particular of their own that wasn't already out there in Europe or the US when it comes to motorcycles. All right, back to regular scheduled programming. We're also in a time where motorcycle riding is changing, right? So back in the day, and it's always been the case that people like to use motorcycles for fun, but fun, not until very recently, it didn't really include very long distance riding. Now it does, and that has meant that the big touring bikes have come about, both in the US, like the big Harley Davidson Ultras and Indian Roadmasters and all of those. Yeah, that has been a thing in the, well, not since the very beginning, but they did evolve afterwards. In Europe, that took a different path. The evolution was, we ended up having GT bikes, right? Like the BMW R1200 GTs, those types of bikes, or maybe the Honda Pan-European. That's what it's called in Europe. I think in the US it's called the ST. That's based on European intentions, right? So point is, or the point I'm trying to make is that in Europe that has taken another route, which is adventure bikes. I mean, it's two steps away from a naked bike, because naked bikes, they grew legs, and or they grew longer legs, and they became scramblers or dirt bikes or things like that, and then they also became long distance tourers, and ended up being the adventure bikes that we know today, like the one that I'm riding on right now. So right now this is becoming more and more the typical European motorcycle. We all ride adventure bikes. It's just what makes the most sense. Why does an adventure bike make the most sense in Europe? Well, because they are pretty good for long distance, and they are also pretty good in twisty roads. So they're like the best of both worlds. You're not really going to enjoy a Goldwing or a Ultra Glide or a Roadmaster in twisty roads going over a mountain pass all throughout Europe. You can enjoy them in the US when you're going flat out 100, 200 miles and not taking a single turn. But you can do that with these bikes as well. So what's happening now is that America is also becoming ripe for adventure bikes. Adventure bikes are the best of both worlds. They can do everything and they can do everything well. And so what that means is that the typical American brand, Indian, Harley, they're gonna have to pick up speed, and Harley already has. I think they've made a really good move by coming out with the Pan America. And because adventure bikes right now, they're the bikes of the present and the future. I don't think that this is going to change for at least another 10 or 20 years. And so if Indian and Harley Davidson don't enter that market, they're gonna get left behind, because this market, and even naked bikes, they're growing even in the US. So yeah, it's interesting. I think it's an interesting topic. I think that's just going back to my original topic here, is that I think those are the reasons why motorcycles have been so different in America compared to Europe. So that's it, guys. That's everything I wanted to say about this topic. So if there's any part of it that you may disagree with, or if there are any things that I may have left out, that you think I may have left out and make sense to discuss, well, feel free to let me know in the comments. And of course, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for the notifications. See you next time. Bye.